Hey everyone, thanks for watching Benzinga Crypto. My name is Logan Ross and I'm joined by my partner in crypto crime, John Gulbranson.
Hey Logan, how you doing?
I'm pretty good, thanks John. Today, John and I are talking to a serial entrepreneur and one of the biggest names in Bitcoin mining today, Don Vo. Hey Don.
Hey Logan, how are you guys?
Oh, I'm great, thanks for asking. I've read some incredible stories about your entrepreneurship success from such a young age. And I'm just curious, do you have any general advice for entrepreneurs out there?
Yeah, I would recommend everybody to stay hungry, and that's what I live by. It doesn't matter, what you have or which walk of life you're coming from. You should always be staying hungry and looking for ways to improve your daily processes, right? And that's really what businesses are built on, solutions to current problems that we have in our daily lives. So every day as I'm going through my daily routine, I'm always thinking to myself, is this the best way to do things, or is there a way to improve? And if I'm having the same problem, if I'm having a problem, more likely than not, there's a lot of people out there that has the same problem. So if you can think of a way to improve a process, potentially you can have a really good business model.
Awesome. So stay hungry and solve your own problems first and foremost, right?
Exactly.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay, so if you could tell us about how you got into crypto and what made you hungry about crypto, what got you to start VBit, that would be awesome.
So that's actually a funny story, and it links me back to my wife. And this went back all the way to late 2009, early 2010 or so. My wife was actually working she was managing the foreign currency exchange here at the Philadelphia International Airport. And one of her clients came through, and he was a early Bitcoin developer. He gave her a replicated physical Bitcoin, and he told her to take a look into it. This is going to be the next biggest thing. So of course, naturally, she comes home, she tells me about it. She was like, hey, one of the clients that I had told me to take a look into this thing called Bitcoin. I think you should take a look into it because he said it's going to be the next biggest thing. So I went online, I researched, I looked up the original white paper, and I read through it. I thought it was an amazing concept. I think it was a great idea. But the problem was there was too many pieces of the puzzle that had to fall into place. That's why I decided to pass on Bitcoin. And pass on, taking a deeper dive into the cryptocurrency, which turned out to be a mistake, by the way. But then, it just started to come up in my daily life a little bit more. I saw a 60 minute segment on it, and then I started to see it pop up more in the news cycle. And this was around 2012, 2013 or so when it was breaking, I believe, like $500 or $600. And at that point, I was like, okay, this probably has some stay power. But I did not get involved at that point because I felt it was a little bit too high. So I waited for a correction, and then I started to enter the crypto space back in 2015 by initially purchasing Bitcoin. And when then they just came, but that was just to buy and hold Bitcoin. But I was also looking at other things that people were doing in this blockchain space and trying to think about, what I could have done to improve the blockchain space. And it was in late 2017, early 2018 that one of my current business partners, he came across another company called WCI, and he thought it was an amazing concept. He brought it up to my attention, and they were kind of doing that, like cloud mining, trading for people. But when I took a look into it, there was too many red flags, and I decided, this is probably not a legitimate company. You don't really, and you can't really verify where all of these funds were coming from because they were promising people that, you put some money, you buy like a package, you put some money into here, and then they're gonna give you, 1% returns. every single day, basically, or some outlandish, like number that I knew is not possible. So I looked at their business model, even though I couldn't decide that they were a legitimate company. I thought the concept was pretty good, and people needed, like everyday folks who don't understand Bitcoin mining, because it requires a lot of, like knowledge. Is a steep learning curve. People who don't understand, they need a easier way to get involved, right? Which is how VBit was born, because I was kind of tired of taking a look at like all the infancy of the industry, and all of these scammers are out and about trying to take advantage of people.
And that must be BitConnect that you're talking about?
Actually, no, it was a company similar to BitConnect. It was called WCI, which later changed its name to Fintegra, I believe. But I don't believe that they're around today anymore. But they're very similar to BitConnect, and BitConnect is one of those other companies that I found had ridiculous amount of red flags. And I couldn't see, like how they could have been legitimate, and it turned out they weren't legitimate.
Yeah, it makes sense. So you set out to improve the blockchain space, and you did that by bringing accessibility to mining for everyone. Am I understanding that correctly so far?
Yes, that's correct. Because the biggest problem that we see today in the mining space is the little guy is getting pushed out, right? The days of people being able to mine from their regular desktop computers or their laptop computers at home, those days are far gone. You can't mine profitably using your home computer anymore. And it's just these big funds and these guys with deep pockets coming in, buying up, like all of the supply. And that's not the original vision of Bitcoin. Satoshi, whoever he was, right, wanted this to be a decentralized currency and a decentralized technology. So we're just trying to keep his vision intact and allow the little guy access into the space.
That's awesome. I love it. And I know Satoshi did not foresee mining pools coming into existence when he created Bitcoin, which I thought was pretty interesting.
So yeah, with that, Don, I guess I'm a bit curious. So who's your target customer that you're going after for providing this mining equipment? I assume this is mining equipment and a software stack as well, right?
Yes, that's correct. So our target clients are actually the everyday folks, the people who are not as, like tech savvy. So as you can imagine, in this current environment where Bitcoin is breaking new all-time highs, and there's a really big shortage of chips, ASIC chips, and mining hardware. Every single day, a lot of companies, a lot of funds reach out to me trying to purchase our whole inventory of hardware, but that's not the target for VBit, right? VBit is trying to bring this opportunity to the everyday folks to allow, the small guy to still take advantage of this great opportunity, because I see this industry where it is right now. It's kind of where the internet was back in the 90s and the early 2000s. So this is a good opportunity for everyone to, get involved, and everyone's basically getting that second chance at, another internet 2.0.
What is really cool to me is that compared to a company like Riot Blockchain, which is another Bitcoin mining company, you guys aren't about just making money. You guys are about providing a service to the small guys, to the little guys, and trying to even it out, which is really cool and really admirable.
Yeah, and I really think that there is a place for all different types of verticals within an industry, right? But we should, just like the banking industry, I really compare this to the banking and the financial industry, right? How pretty much the banks are making money the same way as Bitcoin miners are making money. They're just running data centers and computers to process all of the fiat currency transactions that is taking place every single day. But that has become an industry where the little guy is not going to be able to get involved because it's just dominated by the big players. And now we have this new industry that is functioning on that same business model, where we're just at the core of it, you're just running data centers and running computer equipment to process, instead of fiat currency transaction, Bitcoin transactions, right? And I really think that the everyday folks should have an opportunity to get involved.
Yeah, that's really great. I have heard a lot about VBit's proprietary software. Could you maybe at a high level explain what that means?
Yeah, so currently right now, for all of the people who are not really that savvy, it's really complicated for them to get involved in, like in the mining space. Even if they're able to get their hands on, let's say, a Antminer S9 or an Avalon 1246 mining hardware, once they take it home, and even if they have the right infrastructure to get it, like get it online and everything like that, it's very confusing for them to have to go to individual mining pools and figure out how to set up the accounts and manage that aspect of it, right? So getting your physical computer hardware online, and up and running is one thing, and then you also have to go through the steep learning curve of the software on the mining pool side. So what VBit does is it kind of integrates both processes together. So we operate the data centers that host the computer equipment that people purchase, and it belongs to the end user, the hardware, not the company. And then we have basically our software platform, where our software platform, it allows them to select whichever mining pool that they would like, and we'll point their miners to those pools and kind of manage the hardware for them. And all they need to do is select, like which Bitcoin wallet and which mining pool they want to mine to. So it just makes it very seamless and easy for the everyday folks. And that's why VBit, we have a very different client base, right? So in this space, most crypto companies, their client base is younger, millennials. Millennials are younger, people who are very tech savvy. Our client base currently consists of more everyday folks, so our age demographic, most of our clients are actually over the age of 45, which is very different from all of the other companies in our space.
So Don, is there a level of education that you provide as a part of your products? How would I decide like what mining pool to be involved with, or is there any that's just like one example, I guess, but is there any like educational side to your product to help these everyday folks understand how to use your product?
Yeah, so every single week we have a few live webinars that we do to kind of educate people on the industry as a whole, and then we have our Tuesday meetings every single week for our clients to come online, and we'll train them on different aspects of the industry and different ways and analysis to kind of figure out for themselves which route is the best route to go.
Very cool.
And we're currently working on an online training platform right now too, that is going to be rolled out pretty soon, not too long from now. That is going to give people like better education before making their decisions.
That's really cool. So I'm not sure if that online training software includes like Bitcoin investment advice or crypto investment advice, but with Bitcoin solidly over $1 trillion market cap, do you recommend that everyone has some exposure to BTC in their portfolio, and how would they go about that?
So, like I talk to a lot of people ask me the same question, right? And when I tell them, yes, I definitely think that everybody should have some type of exposure to Bitcoin because the risk and reward ratio just makes sense, right? But then they come back and they tell me, but the price is too high right now. What is this, a bubble? Is this going to crash? And is it going to crash to zero, right? And Bitcoin, in my opinion, is definitely here to stay. If it was to fail, it would have failed a decade ago when nobody knew about it and it needed all of these pieces of the puzzle to fall into place, right? Today, there's a lot of development and money going into the space. Even publicly traded companies like Tesla and MicroStrategy are putting billions of dollars into Bitcoin and holding it on their balance sheet. And that means something, right? This Bitcoin bull run that we're currently in today is a lot different from 2017. 2017 is just fueled by retail FOMO, which retail investors, they're more prone to volatility. These big institutional players, they know what they're doing. Before they put in, like this type of money, they have already done their research. So I really feel confident that, Bitcoin is here to stay. So that being the case, people should really take a really deep thought about, analyzing their risk levels and their entry strategies correctly. And if they do that, they'll find that the risk to reward ratio just makes sense to have some exposure to Bitcoin. Because let's say and I'm not saying, go out there and mortgage off your house or max out your credit cards to buy Bitcoin, right? Because that would be just irresponsible. But I really think that Bitcoin still has a huge growth potential, over 1,000x, over 2,000x over the long run, right? If you're putting in, let's say 1 or 2% of your net worth, if you're wrong, and it crashes and you end up losing money on it, you're not losing a significant enough amount of money that's going to change your lifestyle, right? But if you're correct and Bitcoin does take off 1,000%, 2,000% from here, that's a life changer for a lot of people. So the risk reward ratio from that respect, I think just makes sense.
Certainly. Don, a quick side question. What is the number one value proposition of Bitcoin? What is the top value proposition of Bitcoin in your opinion?
So I think that it's an extremely good store of value, right? It's kind of like the hybrid of fiat currency and gold because it has all of its positive features, but really none of its negative features. For example, the reason why people for thousands of years have adopted gold has placed a value on gold is because it's scarce, it has a limited supply, and it has use cases, right? And then people just started to agree that, okay, if I use gold to pay for things or as a medium of exchange, it's just better than the bartering system that we used to utilize before gold came along. It went from the bartering system to seashells, and the problem with seashells was there was just too much of an abundant supply, right? You can just go onto any beach and pick it up, and now so it doesn't hold its value correctly. That's why people moved on to gold. And then but if gold was the perfect currency, why did we move on to a fiat currency? And that's because the pitfall of gold is it's not easy to store and it's not easy to transport, right? Let's say if you had $10 million and you're living in one of those politically unstable countries like Iraq or Afghanistan, you had $10 million in gold in your house. If the military comes in or a soldier's knocking on your door, you can't really take $10 million worth of gold and put it into your book bag and run away, right? So there's that issue. But then which fiat currency solves that usability and transport and is easier to store problem that gold had. But the problem that people are realizing with fiat currency now is the government can print an endless supply of it, as we are already seeing with the US government. Not only the US government, but throughout this pandemic, all of the governments around the world are starting to print out an endless supply of money, which is going to eventually cause hyperinflation, right? So far if we look throughout the whole history of humankind, there has been no currency that, like stays around forever, right? Eventually it will fall into the cycle of hyperinflation, like Venezuela's currency is going through right now, and then it needs a reset where the government has to get rid of, like that specific currency altogether and start over again. And that's because fiat currency doesn't have that limited supply, which now Bitcoin is kind of like the best of both worlds, right? It's easy to store, it's easy to transport, and also it has that limited supply like gold. So it's kind of like the hybrid of the two, having all of its positives without any of its negatives.
So Don, let me ask you, do you foresee a future where the US government has Bitcoin on its balance sheet and it lives in harmony with the US dollar? Or do you foresee another cryptocurrency replacing fiat currencies as like a normal transaction medium?
So I don't think that any cryptocurrency is going to replace fiat currency altogether, because first of all, the government, like wouldn't allow it, right? Because if they don't have control of their own nation's, like currency, they lose a lot of control. That being said, though, one nation's currency has nothing to do basically with like the other countries' currencies. And I do see a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin eventually is going to be viewed as similar to gold, right? A store of value, a global asset, basically. And I really think that in the future, governments from around the and not even in the future, currently right now, we already have, sovereignties around the world that are already starting to buy Bitcoin and hold it on their balance sheet as a hedge to, their inflating fiat currency, right? So I do see even the US eventually in the future, the government will hold it on its balance sheet because that is going to be the international standard, basically. And it's going to be something that a singular government is not going to be able to avoid unless, the only way to crush, Bitcoin, right, is if every single country from around the world, every single government agrees that, okay, we're not going to allow this. And we can't, we can't even agree on the basic things like getting water access or even getting, access to an ATM or the regular financial system that we have already, right? So there's no reason to think that all the governments from around the world is going to wake up one day and decide, let's work together on this. We're going to crush this, because when one government shuns on it, another government is going to embrace it because they're going to see it as an opportunity to get the leg up and really become more innovative and more relevant to the rest of the world and to be involved in global trade. But once the U.S. regulators start to approve ETFs, start to approve, have a regulatory framework for all of the companies to basically like guardrails for the companies to play in. I think the rest of the world is going to start to follow its example. It's already going that direction, right? Because back a little bit to JP Morgan, right? You see that Jamie Dimon has spent the better of the last decade just bashing on Bitcoin. Now all of a sudden, his company filed for a new note product that is going to allow its customers exposure to companies that they think is directly or indirectly related to the cryptocurrency space, right? So when a trillion, large banks like that starts to get involved and really take notice, the regulators are going to, take notice, and the regulators is going to follow suit as well. And by the way, even though I'm talking about JP Morgan's new note product, I wouldn't touch that product with a 5-foot pole. So I don't recommend it to anybody because I really think that's a bad way to gain exposure to Bitcoin. And I think Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan just found another way to squeeze money out of the small guys.
Exactly. It really speaks to the demand too. It really speaks to the demand that, they go this far to figure out how to make money from it, right? People
yeah,
really want
especially.
it.
Yeah, because if people pay attention and really read, like the prospectus, I know I'm a nerd. I actually go and read all the SEC filings and all that kind of stuff, which I know most people don't. But that's why I just wanted to mention it here, right? Their prospectus says that either way they're going to make money, all right? Because they're charging a 1.5% fee, regardless of if the user makes money or not. And owning the note is not, like the same as actually owning the stock. Basically, when you buy their note, they're just taking your money and they're allocating it percentage-wise into a basket of stocks and companies that they think is related to Bitcoin, right? And owning that note is not the same as the stock, because they're not. They said that they're not distributing any dividends that those companies might distribute during that time that you're holding the note. So you're already losing out on like any potential profit from those dividends. And then at the end of the day, when the note matures, they're taking a 1.5%, profit, which is essentially their fee, right? So you're better off just because they had list out the percentages there for you already. So you're the end user is better off just going to buy. Take their money and buy that same percentage allocation, and specifically in those companies, and you just eliminated their JP Morgan's fees. And then if there's any dividends that's distributed by those companies, you get to keep it too.
So is that how you would recommend someone who's looking to get exposure to Bitcoin do it, or would you just say, hey, hold some BTC?
So there's a few ways to get involved, right? I really think that those companies over the long run, as Bitcoin prices mature, they will do well. To say that it's the best way to gain exposure to Bitcoin, I certainly wouldn't think so, because when you're buying into those companies, you're also paying a premium for their services, right? So let's say if Bitcoin prices grow, 500%. You're depending on when you purchased those stocks, you're probably not going to get the same performance as directly buying the Bitcoin. But buying Bitcoin is prone to it's a new asset class. There's a lot of volatility, as we all know already. One day, it might be up a few $1,000s. The next day, it might be down a few $1,000s, right? So it's definitely not for the faint of heart. If I'm just a regular, a regular folk, right? I take $10,000, I buy directly into Bitcoin, and then tomorrow I wake up, I just lost a few $1,000s on my money. I would be panicking. I would immediately hit that sell button, cut my losses, and say, okay, this was such a bad investment, only to realize a week or a month later, it came back and it hit a new all-time high. And then I'm just kicking myself and I fall into that vicious cycle, right? So there is definitely a lot of risk to buy directly into Bitcoin. I do think that over the long run, it will appreciate in value by quite a bit. But there's going to be a lot of volatility in between, which is the number one reason why, over 90% of people who invest or buys Bitcoin or any asset class is not going to make any money and end up losing money, right? Because of that volatility, and they can't control their emotions. So honestly, I think that Bitcoin mining is the best way to gain exposure to Bitcoin's potential growth, and that's why all of these bigger companies like Riot Blockchain, like Marathon Digital Group, is they realize that Bitcoin mining is the best way to get to gain exposure, because and I did an analysis last year comparing Bitcoin mining comparing to just buying and holding Bitcoin, right? Using a Antminer S9's hash power and stats compared to just instead of using $800 to buy the Antminer S9 when it first came out, you used $800 to buy and just hold Bitcoin all the way up until last year, April something last year, which was when I did the analysis. And it actually shows that even if you were just Bitcoin mining and you were selling off your the Bitcoin that you're mining every single day, you still actually outpaced buying and holding Bitcoin. And then you do a lot better when you mine for Bitcoin, and then you're just selling off enough to cover your operational costs, and you're holding, like the daily profits. You end up outpacing buying and holding by more than 4 times.
So Bitcoin mining is definitely one of the best ways and the least volatile. Let's take it to the other side of the spectrum now, the most volatile, NFTs. Do you have any in your portfolio?
So I don't have any NFTs in my portfolio yet. I'm still, because I haven't found anything that I really like that I'm willing to drop, like $69 million on an NFT, right? I definitely think it's a very cool project, and I definitely think it has it has a place in society and a place into the future, and it's kind of where the internet was back in the 90s and early 2000s, right? And as we already know, history shows us that the internet is a technology that we can't live without today, right? But back then, when you're buying, like any of these stocks that like .com stocks, you're paying a heavy premium, and there was, it was in a bubble because it was a new technology. You're paying a heavy premium, and and if you didn't watch it, you might, lose a lot of money. And but then eventually everything matures, and there's a place for the internet in today's life, and it's irreplaceable, right? So I think NFTs are kind of like similar to the internet back then, and because people have been trying to solve, like the problem of how do we adequately compensate and pay artists for their work, and I think NFT is a very good solution to that problem. The only thing is so new, and it definitely is within, like this bubble cycle, and when you hear about someone paying almost $70 million for a painting, I feel like that's a bit much. And maybe it's because, like I don't have, like that eye to appreciate art as other people. But I don't see myself paying, like that amount of money for any amount of art, right? But that being said, NFTs is a very good solution because it really lays out the framework for ownership, lays out the framework for the artist to get compensated. It just needs a little bit more time to mature and people to understand the NFTs a little bit more before you see that heavy premium go away.
Have you by chance explored much of the Metaverse yet?
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't explored, really done any deep analysis or really explored into it yet, so I can't really speak to that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like it's been popping up, and it's been very intriguing type of world that is being formed out of these. NFTs is kind of like one of the foundational pieces of it, like of people owning property in this metaverse. Like obviously art's the one application, but this whole metaverse application of bringing that art into that digital world, but then also just like the different ways that you can use NFTs. I don't know. It's absolutely fascinating to me. I'm still trying to figure it out and exploring it actively right now, but I was just curious if you've had an experience yet.
And you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of Second Life. Are you guys familiar with Second Life? Yeah, I think Second Life. So what Second Life is it's a virtual reality game that allows people to kind of like start a new life cycle within the game, right? And in that game, you're actually, doing everything that you would outside in the real world. Like you're born, you go to work, your character is studying, you're going to clubs, you're doing everything that you would do in the real world, and you can actually own property and build businesses within that game. So I think they're just like a very early version of where the metaverse is right now. And crypto is enabling, the metaverse to take it one step further, basically. But did you hear about Alice Coin by any chance?
I saw it absolutely blew off on Binance from like 5 cents or a penny to like $60 or something in like minutes.
Yeah,
that's all I know of it. I don't know any more than that about it.
That really blew my mind. So Alice Coin is the cryptocurrency being used in, I forgot the name of the game, but it's basically a game very similar to Second Life, right? That allows you to actually own property and do things in that game in real life. So that was the native token. And as soon as it, hit Binance, went from like 5 cents to $60, which just blew my mind. I wouldn't be surprised if NFTs starts to get integrated into that game pretty soon.
It's another intriguing thing. There was actually something that blew up on Twitter yesterday about like what these NFTs actually are. Like it's just like JSON metadata, right? Like that they combine, depending on what platform it is, that they just like combine like the metadata in it. It's something that I want to actually look into more to like kind of understand exactly how they're creating these NFTs, because it's just data, right? And so they're not actually storing the entire file on the blockchain, but there's like ways that they can, there's ways that you could obviously store files in a decentralized manner, but I think most of these NFTs, you don't like look up the NFT and then get the file. It's like it's an NFT with an actual URL to like load that file. So it's like an interesting like nuance that I think probably people understand of how NFTs work. And I don't know, we're going to be diving deeper into that.
I was just going to connect this back to like the power of smart contracts, how NFTs are enabled by them, and these blockchain-based games are enabled by them, and how they're really expanding the capabilities of blockchain systems. And that leads me into a question that I have for you, Don. If you were your 13-year-old entrepreneurial self today, and you were to create a blockchain startup or a crypto startup, what would you be looking for?
And that's actually a very good question, right? So I think, like if I was 13 today, obviously I wouldn't have, access to capital, right? I would have very little money to my name. I might be, getting my $5, $5 a week money from my parents or something like that. Thinking about it, like if I had no capital, I think the best way to, start a business within the blockchain space for someone with very limited capital is basically start a marketplace for people to connect and buy and sell peer-to-peer, Bitcoin sales, right? To facilitate that. And what I mean is right now there's, being that the industry is still in its infancy stage, there's still a lot of inefficiencies within the industry. So right now, when people want to buy Bitcoin, the first thing they would think about is just go to Coinbase, right, or one of those exchanges. But those exchanges actually charges a lot of fees. So like, for example, Coinbase, they charge 1% on top of charging kind of like a spread already. So if you're buying if you're buying about $5,000 or $6,000 worth of Bitcoin, you're paying anywhere from $200 to $300. So you're paying a few $100 just to facilitate that already. And all it is just they are at the core of their business, they're just connecting people with Bitcoin that wants to sell with people with money that wants to buy Bitcoin, and then they're collecting those fees, right? So instead of doing that, if you didn't have a lot of money like Coinbase to go out get all of those licenses and all that kind of stuff, I would just build kind of like a marketplace similar to like a Craigslist or an auction site like eBay, right? Which the code is readily available out there already. Charge people listing fees instead, and connect the buyer and the seller together through the auction space, and then you're going to be collecting a listing fee, and that's how you can start a business with very limited capital, right? And then the success of the business would boil down to your creativity and how successful you are to kind of like market your business and your website, which, you know, like if you do it correctly through social media, there's like so many tools out there today that you can really get your name out there without incurring, you know, like a lot of CapEx costs.
That brings it full circle, I think, to the beginning. So John, if you don't have any more questions.
Really appreciate it, Don.
Great talking to you.
It was great talking to you guys as well. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to talking to you guys more in the future.